Hi, my name is Jamie Moreno, and the documentary that I have chosen for my DocuDemic assignment is A Survivor's Guide to Prison. It's an in depth look at the individuals who are targeted for criminal activity, the criminal justice system process, the how to survive in prison, how to protect yourself if you find yourself in that situation, how to prevent that type of situation. It really covers everything we've studied up until now. Every book we've read and every section we've crossed, it encompasses all the information. So if you get an opportunity to watch this one, it was very informative and interesting. I highly recommend this one. Um, One of the big topics that is discussed in this video is the disadvantages of poverty. In this video, what they've concluded is in order to overcome the criminal justice system, you do have to have the financial means to do so. And in not doing so, you're basically setting yourself up to stay in prison. Our Constitution does grant us the right to fair trial, but based off of this documentary, um, we, the United States, have the highest number of incarcerated criminals in the entire world. Um, it's it's kind of silly, and if you think about that, if we have the highest number of criminals in the entire world in our United States, then we can only conclude that we do not have the resources available for fair counsel, and that is an issue because our public defenders are overwhelmed if they're dealing with this many criminals, and they obviously don't have the dedicated time that they can give one case to ensure that a person's rights are not violated or that someone isn't wrongfully accused. um, This kind of ties back into the first book we read, Just Mercy. A lot of these individuals were African American, low income individuals who were targeted and arrested and ended up facing the death penalty. Of course, majority of these people didn't have the financial means to buy their way out of the situation, basically. Um, but some of them did get the assistance that they needed and were found innocent. And ultimately, if we arrest individuals, we're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But it doesn't seem like that's the way the whole process works, because it can take years before you're actually convicted, or you go to trial, or you're given any opportunity to do anything like that. Um, Being part of the lower economic status, you face those obstacles. You have no one to advocate for you, and if you don't have anyone advocating for you, then it makes it really hard to prove your innocence. In the documentary, one of the cases we reviewed and discussed was the case of Bruce Lisker. He was wrongfully accused of murdering his mother. The evidence didn't match up, but all it took was one law enforcement officer to say it did, and that was good enough to lock him up. He ended up spending close to 13 years in prison systems before he was wrongfully accused. Initially, he did not have the financial means to hire the best legal defense. And unfortunately, who he did hire or was able to afford to hire didn't invest as much time as he should have into the case, which resulted in his wrongful conviction of a guilty for the murder of his mother. It wasn't until a few years later, well, several years later actually, that his father ended up passing away while he was in prison, and his father had actually left behind a life insurance policy, which left him or ended up leaving him close to 200,000, and that's essentially what he used to fight his conviction. 13 years later, unfortunately, um, was he acquitted for a crime he didn't commit. Um, this is critical because part of what it explains to you is if you do find yourself in that situation, then you immediately need to find the resources to hire affordable legal counsel. This is your best shot at not wasting time, or being convicted of something and then wasting time in the prison systems. Um, when he came across that money, he was able to open up his own investigation all over again, have his attorneys follow that process, hire private investigators to gather evidence and collect information. And ultimately, even when this evidence was presented into the legal system, you know, the legal system covers for itself. Nobody wants to be seen as a fool. And instead of owning, hey, I made a mistake and this mistake cost an innocent man his life, you try to continue to hide and cover that up. That takes you back to abuse of authority. Our law enforcement agents take an oath and they are to protect and serve. But unfortunately, sometimes that honor comes with um, abuse of power, and you have individuals who do that. And pride is a very, very terrible thing, and sometimes these people refuse to admit that they are wrong and would rather let someone rot and suffer than to come back and admit, I did something wrong, I made a mistake, we need to let this person out. And that was so in his case. According to the individuals that they interviewed, the law enforcement agency was out to protect itself. That he's not getting out of jail. Even if this evidence came forward, it's not going to happen. And this is the case with many individuals. We read about it in Just Mercy, and apparently it's still happening now. So we need to do something about our legal justice system and accountability. In the documentary, um, one of the individuals, I believe it was Mr. Reggie, who was wrongfully incarcerated as well, makes a comment, and um, he says, doctors and lawyers have to go to school for so many years, but somebody who can carry a gun and take life doesn't have the same requirement. Um, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because you're right. These homicide detectives, really, do they have the proper education to make those determinations, or is it just, I worked my way up the ladder, and it's more of an arrogant thing, and you become consumed in that. We're human beings, and this happens. We have to have a fair way to have balance and checks in place. Apparently, when Mr. Lisker challenged the evidence, they had their internal affairs department come in and open up his investigation, but they found nothing, conveniently. So he didn't stop there. It went on and got the media involved and so on. And he was able to eventually, come out of that situation. Unfortunately, there are not many out there who are able to do this. People end up dying in prison wrongfully accused. It happens all the time. Um, One of the other big factors that we look at is being not just poor, but the minority. Being of a minority race actually makes you more likely to end up doing or being accused of a crime than any other. And that just increases your chances. So, we live in a world or in a day and an age where that should not be an issue, where, we're all equal and everybody is the same. But unfortunately, that is still out there. You've got abuse of power. You have people with different mindsets. You have all these issues. And, it just, you're an easy target. It's easier to target a minority. It's easier to just place blame somewhere else, and abuse that authority that's given to you. Um, With that being said, it kind of ties into stuff that goes on in the prison systems. From the documentary, they shared information on how when you get there, you're grouped off by your race. Each group has somebody. And if you don't find somebody, then you basically don't have any protection. That's racism all over again. That's something that was done away with years ago. However, you go into the prison system and it's the only way to survive, by practicing that. And then you have these individuals who get out of the prison system and then bring that mentality with them out into the real world. And it's like, when does it ever stop? This is behavior that is encouraged in prison systems, that prison guards encourage, that they allow to take place. This should not be the case. We've seen too much of that. We've seen how this negatively impacts in a lot of the readings that we did. And there should be a zero tolerance for that. But what does our criminal justice system do to put a stop to it? Because from the documentary itself, they encourage it. So, racism is a big issue. If we continue to have that, then you're going to continue to see more targets of minority cases. And it's not right. You're going to continue to see abuse of power because people are going to feel superior. Something has to be done for our criminal justice system and our law enforcement system. They conducted an experiment. I think it's the Yale experiment, conducted in 1960, that basically did an experiment on how people respond to authority. And apparently some of these people were willing to, it was like a shock therapy type system, and for every wrong question the person would get shocked and increase the voltage and what have you. And some of these people who were being shocked were actors and weren't actually being shocked, but they got to the point where during their interrogation or questioning or whatever it is, they began to complain of chest pains and it hurts, it's too high. But some of these, or at least 65% of these individuals, continued to push and shock. We respond to authority. That's just the way that it is. And when you have people in authority roles who abuse it, that's taking advantage of everything. That's just completely crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. We as a society need to do something to change this. We need to advocate for better, I don't know, maybe some psychological testing for these police officers. You've got good and you've got bad, but you've got to find a way to weed it out. If you have more bad than good out there, then we're just creating a vicious cycle. A lot of these prison systems lack reform or a rehabilitative process. When somebody becomes incarcerated, they then they have no way when they get out. They've got no money. If they've been there long enough, they've been abandoned. They've got no home. They've got no car. They've got no job. They've got nothing other than a criminal record and a lack of job history. We need to come up with some type of program that will show or that sheds importance on rehabilitation, because some of these individuals, they just need the right opportunity to never find themselves in that situation again. And if we're not granting them that, then we're setting them up to fail again. A lot of these prison systems are privately owned and use their prisoners pretty much as slaves for the amount of money that they make. You can call that slavery. They're making cents per hour for their hard labor. And while these private prisons and industries or even state-funded prisons are making money off of this, granted they've got to keep the jail systems going, but it should not be abused. That should serve as work history. That should be something that they can take out with them into the real world. They should be focused and placed into some type of program that works with them in their strong skill set and helps them just find work, so that by the time they leave prison, they have somewhere to go. Now, what they do after that, that's going to be up to them. But this would definitely help us, have these individuals revert from going back to their same criminal ways, having to rob, steal, or whatever just to put food on the table or to get something in their belly. Um, the documentary really, really shed some light on everything. Um, More than what we've covered, goes into greater detail. But if I took anything away from that documentary, is that we need to make a change. We really, really need to focus and do something for our society and advocate. I mean, really, really advocate for a stronger criminal justice system. Things need to change. They can't keep going the way that they are. Racism, poverty, discrimination, they're things that we will deal with for the rest of our lives, for the rest of this entire whatever it is that we have left. We've got to make a difference. We've got to make some changes, and we have got to apply a lot of the stuff that we have learned and find a way to prevent, if not correct, this type of behavior. I thank you for your time today. I hope my information was understanding. I hope I was able to interpret it correctly. Um, I strongly recommend it. If you do not get a chance to watch it, I don't even think 15 minutes is enough in this academic assignment to cover everything that it entails. But um, I strongly encourage you to watch the documentary. I did find it on Netflix, and it ties into everything that we've studied and learned. And some of the key points that I chose to discuss were the ones that impacted me the greatest. But there's so much more out there, and it really shed some light on everything. Thank you for your time today.